Hi, I'm Aisher. In this video I'm going to be looking at reverb in Cubase. Now reverb comes in various shapes and sizes in Cubase, and reverb is a way of adding an ambience to existing sounds and actually trying to give a sense of space to your mix. So let's have a look. So you can see I've already set up a piano sound. Relatively dry sound, and I also set it up in the mixer so I can actually access different types of reverb. The first one I'm going to look at is REVerence. I'm going to enable that, so I'm sending now to the reverb as well as hearing the existing dry sound. Let's open it up so you can see it as well. And straight away you can see that this is called Austrian Concert Hall. Now the important thing to realise about REVerence is an impulse response or a convolution based reverb, which means it's actually been captured from a real space. So you have, and hence the name Austrian Concert Hall, it's actually been captured from a concert hall. In effect, someone has gone in there and actually used test tones and microphones to actually capture a sense of the reverb captured from a specific position with a sound sounding another position in the concert hall. So you're recreating the sound of a space, or the sound of you at least sitting in a certain position in a certain space. So we'll now play the piano. You can hear the tail coming off that piano sound. And this waveform here is in fact the waveform of representing the actual impulse response itself in terms of the shape of the reverb. Now impulse response reverbs allow you to do relatively little in terms of shaping because they're based on a capture of a specific space. You can do some manipulation of the underlying impulse response audio file in essence to make it longer or shorter, and a little bit of filtering and things like that. But overall you can't tweak the sound massively, but it's very good, and they are very good for achieving very realistic sounding spaces. So if you want something that sounds like the real world, and you can see here there are lots of options in terms of different types of spaces. LA Studio, the Austrian Concert Hall we've had already, a New York Studio AB, reverb plate, so actually captured from an artificial reverb as well. These can be used to capture artificial reverbs, but again you don't have much tweaking that allows you to change the sound in massive ways. So that's the first one. So generally for realistic sounding reverbs, impulse response reverbs like REVerence are the place to go. If you want something that allows you to tweak the sound much more and to perhaps go into, I don't know, create sonic spaces that don't even really exist in the real world, you'll have a reverb like reverbation. Now this is an algorithmic reverb, which means that it's a digital piece of code that has been created to sound like a reverb, and you can tweak certain parameters, but it allows you to tweak parameters which perhaps you wouldn't necessarily get in the real world. And one of those things that you particularly find in decent algorithmic reverbs is modulation. It's in effect a bit like adding a little bit of chorus to the reverb. Now of course that never happens in the real world, but it works brilliantly for adding a lushness to certain sounds, particularly when you've got longer reverb times, and it works really well on those to create those very long and engaging and I suppose musically useful reverbs that might be used in tracks where you want to create a nice bed, a reverb bed for the sound to connect with or fall into. So let's play the reverb, play the piano and listen to the reverb here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push up the reverb time and push this main time slider up, and you can see there's a representation here of what's going on. And now let's play the piano again. And I can change the modulation. Now I'm not playing anything and the reverb's carrying on. Let's just pull that down a little bit and play again. And there are different models in algorithmic reverbs. This one's based on so-called hall, you get chamber and studio and many others. To be honest, these are really just semi-arbitrary categories that are, sometimes the algorithms are designed and then people name the reflection model, or they actually name the actual preset afterwards. So it sort of kind of the opposite order to impulse responses, because you can create some very odd sounding spaces where the reverb might build more slowly than in the real world. You have odd diffusion characteristics, which mean low frequencies or high frequencies decay in very different rates to what you might find in the real world as well. But what you do have is lots of flexibility in terms of being able to tailor the sound to the specific use. So if I want to create this lush tail, I can actually add a bit of modulation, I can increase the reverb time, I can maybe increase the delay time for this tail, you can change the shape of it, so the onset of how quickly the reverb develops. So for example, here I've changed the shape. And it actually takes a little bit of time to build up to the maximum sort of reverb density, and then it decays. You can change lots of different parameters, and that's obviously something you can't really do with impulse response based reverbs like REVerence, which we looked at just now. Now, algorithmic reverbs all come in different shapes and sizes, and some are famed for their algorithms, and some become extremely famous for their particular algorithms because they've been used on so many commercial tracks. Now in Cubase we have Revelation, but we also have Roomworks, which is a somewhat simpler reverb. It actually has, in some respects, it looks like it has quite a few controls, but Roomworks, beg your pardon, seems to be somewhat more CPU efficient. In fact, you can tailor the efficiency. You can actually go for a much more efficient algorithm by tweaking this here, and it means you're using far less CPU, because of course any plugin that you use, any processing you use that's being used in real time will use up your CPU, the power of your computer, and the more reverbs you use, that will build up. So sometimes it's really nice to be able to tailor that efficiency, and so you can do that with this. And here we have this reverb. You can see with that efficiency pushed to 62%, you get this slight ringing type quality, which is not quite as pleasing. And actually you could argue that perhaps doesn't sound so realistic. It might work really well for certain drum sounds and things like that. There are no real hard and fast rules, but for certainly in terms of realism and engagement, it starts to lose something. So you then obviously would naturally push the efficiency back up and play around with the reverb to suit the track. Let's try it now. That certainly has something, but I think it can be argued that it doesn't necessarily sound as good as Revelation. It doesn't quite have that sophistication which Revelation has. And again, that modulation in Revelation can really add something to the overall tone. So in this video, we looked at reverb in Cubase. We've looked at impulse response, convolution-based reverbs like REVerence, and we've looked at algorithmic reverbs like Revelation and Roomworks. And you can see they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Impulse response reverbs perhaps offer less customization in terms of tweaking for your specific uses, but they offer the option of real realism because they're based on those real world spaces. And the algorithmic reverbs tend to offer a lot more in the way of being able to tweak and change the sound of the reverb to suit specific purposes.